All right, everyone, time for another episode of Catching Up with Bobby Wilson. We spent the first two episodes really getting into catching, and we're going to get back to that, but figured we'd discuss happy times as a Rangers fan back in 2015 when Bobby was a Ranger and the Rangers won the AL West, overtaking the Houston Astros. And for my money, what was the best year when it came to the Rangers-Astros rivalry. A lot of great memories there. We'll get into that. But first, Bobby, I got some beef with you.
Okay, let's go.
On Saturday, this past Saturday, we were at home playing the White Sox. And before the game, I was in the dugout, visibly frustrated because my alma mater, the University of Southern California, at the time was losing to one of the worst college football programs in the country in Washington State. Now, they ended up winning. My football program, admittedly, is in shambles, but Chris Woodward was in the dugout, and he kind of threw you under the bus and said that you questioned whether football on the West Coast even existed. And it's funny because I know you're a big LSU fan, and LSU's won 4 national titles. USC's won 11, and they've won since LSU won its very first national title in 1958. USC has won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I mean, does football really exist in Louisiana? How does that one work?
So here's my biggest gripe about all this is, like, when did those championships happen?
Most recently in the early 2000s.
Okay, so I was barely out of grade school. You know what I mean? So all I know at this point in time is that the Southeastern Conference is by far the most dominant conference probably that we've seen in quite some time. And yes, I'm a little partial to, Florida football, Louisiana football. But yeah, it's funny because Brett Hayes is a UCLA guy. And, when LSU went over there to Pasadena and got their butts whooped early in the year, trust me, I was hearing it pretty much nonstop and I still hear it, even after they lost last week. I, got to Brett, he goes, I don't care, we beat you guys, so, but yeah, I mean, for real though, football in the South is it's life. It really is. There's football, and then honestly, baseball kind of comes after that. So growing up in Florida is obviously a big football school, or a big football state. So I got a lot of ties down there to football, and yes, I am very, very partial to the SEC.
Well, bias aside, unfortunately, Pac-12 has become a joke because they had arguably the worst commissioner in all of sports, who is no longer there. But that conference is now barely even a Power 5 conference, and I cannot wait for USC to be relevant again, because unfortunately USC is really not relevant in present-day college football. All right, so 2015. USC wasn't so relevant in 2015 either, but whatever. So that was my first year in this role. And you know this, and I think most people watching probably know this, grew up in the Metroplex, diehard Rangers fan, getting to, be a part of the broadcast in some capacity, was super excited, but went to spring training. And if fans recall, 2014 was a really rough year. It was the first bad year of the decade. And it was unclear whether the team was just not good or it was because of all the injuries. And the Rangers set franchise records, I think, in players used and pitchers used in 2014. And anyone who was anyone that year got hurt. And the only player who kind of didn't get hurt was Shin-Soo Choo. But it was more that he was playing through injuries he should not have been playing through because he had just signed this big contract. So even Choo, who I think, if I recall, was dealing with a really bad back, had a really bad year in 2014, was effectively hurt. But Beltre, Prince, anyone who threw the baseball, I mean, it was just a really rough year. You go into spring training 2015, I think internally there was a lot of optimism. New manager, Jeff Bannister, and that was the other thing. 2014 was a wacky year because that was the end of the Ron Washington era, an abrupt ending. And so you start 2015, and I think we started in Oakland dropped 2 of 3, or maybe I think we dropped 2 of 4 in Oakland, but ultimately started the year 8-16. So it seems like a continuation of 2014. And I remember one of the narratives was the injuries were just a disguise for what was not a good team. New manager, Jeff Bannister. So obviously there are questions, manager, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, the Astros get off to like the best start that they've gotten off to in the American League. Ever since they became an American League team, they'd basically been miserable. And they're the talk of baseball, and they got this young, exciting team, and they're finally good again. And then May came around, and I'll never forget, there was a 9-game road trip in the middle of May. I'd forget the order, but it was Boston, New York, Cleveland. We lost the first and last game of the road trip, but went 7-2. And that put us back into a place of respectability competitively. And I think there were some ups and downs. I remember when the team made the Cole Hamels trade, it was kind of on the heels of getting our butts kicked by the Yankees 21-5. And I think at the time of the trade, the Rangers were below 500, but there was a different feel. Like there were a lot of competitive games, and you felt like the pieces were kind of there, and the bullpen was rough, but adding Diekman and Dyson and Sean Tollison taking over as the closer, it just normalized things. And that's kind of about when you come into the picture, because you were acquired right there at the trade deadline. And so at the trade deadline, the Rangers acquire Hamels, and the thought is, hey, this deal is whatever he gives us this year is great, but this deal is really for the next few years because he was under contract. And at that point, things really started to change. So what do you remember about coming over to the Rangers? I guess we pick things up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to correct you and say that the big acquisition at the deadline was myself.
That's
a lot of people like to overlook that. Hey, we got Hamels, we got Diekman, we got Dyson, but they neglect the fact that I came in at that same exact day.
That's when it turned.
But no, so I started the year with Tampa, and we played the Rangers early on. And I can remember playing the Rangers thinking, oh boy, this isn't the same team from that I played against with the Angels in 10, 11, and 12. This is a completely different team. And honestly, like I was like, this team's just okay. I think there was a lot of injuries at that point early in the year too when we played them. And honestly I was like, yeah, I don't know about these guys, But moving forward, I had a rough start to the season there and in Tampa, and wind up getting designated. So I actually went to the minor leagues for a few weeks, got called back up for a day right before the trade deadline, and wound up getting designated again the next day, and then got a call from my agent, hey, the Texas Rangers claimed you. And at that point, I was still, thinking about the 10 and 11 teams and the energy that all the fans brought, and, how hard it was to go into Texas and play those clubs. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I can't wait to go there. And then I remembered playing them early in the year. I go, oh, they're not very good, so get that call, jump on a plane. As I'm jumping on the plane, kind of hear, hey, you got Cole Hamels, you got Diekman, you got Dyson. Oh, and by the way, Chirinos is hurt, and Carlos Corporon was the other catcher. They're both hurt. So now Jimmy and I are jumping into this.
Chris Jimenez.
Basically, Chris Jimenez, are jumping into this as the main two guys to start catching. Which is weird. That usually doesn't happen in a season. But what I can remember from day one was walking in that clubhouse and feeling something special going on. I'll never forget that my cab got there the same exact time that Diekman's cab got there. So I can remember us pulling up at the old ballpark. The tunnel went downstairs into the parking garage, and obviously the clubhouse was right off that parking garage. But I remember going down And I think it was like the second or third inning of that game, so I was active. I didn't get there till second, third inning. Diekman didn't get there till the second or third inning. And I can remember us meeting, being like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm Bobby. He goes, "I'm Deke." I'm like, "All right, nice to meet you, man. Ready to do this?" And just kind of walked into the clubhouse. I got changed real quick. I remember walking to the dugout. And for people who don't know, it's a very lonely feeling when you walk into a clubhouse and nobody. So I remember walking in, changing. Hoggy was the clubhouse manager at that time, got me everything I needed. Brandon Boyd, who was the assistant at that time, now our head guy, took care of me. What do you need? This, that, get changed, put my uniform on, go to the dugout, try to start introducing myself to people. I'll never forget, there was a video of, Cole and I meeting each other for the first time on the bench, after being rushed to the airport, rushed to get to the ballpark. And we're just standing there and like, "Hey, Cole, I'm Bobby." "Okay, I'm Cole." I'm like, "All right, great. Nice to meet you." And Mike Maddox, I'll never forget. He goes, "Hey, Bobby," he goes, "we only have one bullpen catcher. I need you to run down to the bullpen, just in case we get somebody going." And I'm like, "Holy cow. Now I got to I have no idea where I can get to the bullpen." And he's like, "Go to get one of the clubbies. I'll take you down there." So run down there, jump down there and jump in the bullpen and start meeting some of the bullpen guys. And that was kind of the first day. Was just crazy day. And then,
do you remember the date? Was it July 31st or was it the 30th or what do you?
Gosh, I don't remember the date exactly, but it had to be, there was 2 months left in the season. I do remember that.
Okay, so just to give everyone an idea, so this is after the results on July 31st. The Rangers were right here, 7 games back of Houston. I mean, heck, to kind of illustrate how rough of a start it was, 41 runs, minus 41 in the run differential. That's something that usually gives you a decent idea. We'll go here to see where it was on May 1st, just to, again, give people an idea of how rough of a start it was. Make sure the internet cooperates here. So on May 1st, the Rangers were 7-15. All right. At the very bottom, we told you it got to 8-16. And then July, I want to say it was July 27th, July 28th was when we first heard that the Hamels trade was going to happen. And then it doesn't become official right away. But I want to see if I can get the box score of what was really kind of the low point. The internet's not cooperating. We'll give it a second. Otherwise, we'll just punt on this. Won't seem to switch. But this is right before Bobby got there and the Yankees were in town. And let's see here. Is this it? Okay, so not this one. Maybe it's the next day. Promise I'm not making this up. Okay, here you go. 21-5. And I think, Bobby, the Rangers were up 5-0 after the first inning. And I don't want to waste people's time and go into the box score. And then after that, 8 games back, 5 games under. And it was really after that game. I think it was during that game when the rumors were like Rangers acquiring Cole Hamels and, Bobby Wilson, of course. That was the
yes, of course. There we go.
Yeah. But that's when things really turned. And it's funny you mentioned people, going into a clubhouse. One of the really key additions was Sam Dyson, and none of us had any idea who Sam Dyson was. And I'll never forget Nick Martinez's brother was in town, and we're all waiting for Sam Dyson around his locker. He's apparently going to show up, and Nick Martinez's brother just happens to sit in the locker next to Sam Dyson, or next to Nick, but it's Sam Dyson's locker. And so the writers swarm Nick Martinez's brother thinking he was Sam Dyson. Hey, do you have a second, whatever. And he turned around. It's like, why do you want to talk to me? But that's that. Sam Dyson was not a known, it wasn't like acquiring Andrew Miller. It was this guy from the Marlins who had always been hurt and kind of looked like a leprechaun. And he and Deke and Cole, and in all seriousness, the stability that you and Chris Jimenez provided, those were the big changes that took place from when the Rangers were here and then till the happy ending at the end of the regular season. But okay, so you get there and things are really starting to turn. When you arrived, were you like, hey, like you didn't have the belief of being with this team all year. So you're not as invested like, hey, we can do it. So when you arrived, were you even thinking like, hey, playoffs, let's do it?
No, at that point, honestly, I had started the year so badly that I was just excited to be back in the big leagues. It was like, all right, cool, let's go. I mean, they're not very good right now, but like I said, I always, even as an Angel, I always felt attached to the Texas Rangers organization. I don't know why, but there was just this love that I had for the fan base, for the way they went about their business. And in 10-11, the way they played the game is, with the Michael Youngs, that's how you play the game. They played the game the right way with Kinsler. I mean, those guys ran out every single ball. They played the game the right way. You saw the love that they had for each other. And honestly, like, I was more excited about that kind of chemistry with a team than I was about really anything else. I know both those guys weren't there, but that's just what I associated with Texas Rangers baseball, was hard-nosed guys who went after it. They were going to take you out at second base. They were going to run you over at the plate, and they weren't going to feel sorry about it. That's who they were. They were grinders. They were good players, really good players, but they played the game the right way. But what I remember about coming into that clubhouse was there was no pressure. It didn't feel like pressure. It felt like, hey, go play, man. Whatever happens, but just go play. Be yourself. And honestly, I told this story to our organization when I took the job as a AA manager. I said the one thing that I felt about the Texas Rangers organization was I finally felt free. I felt free to, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake, but make it free. And that was kind of the one thing that we had a big meeting about, how do we want to push forward with our organization at this point? And one of the things that I remember was, like, when I played in Anaheim, I wasn't free. We kept saying, oh, we want to be fearless. We want to be fearless. I said, yeah, we do want to be fearless, but you have to be free before you can be fearless. And kind of one of our quotes and on our walls and throughout our clubhouse, on the steps leading up to the field, is free and fearless. And that's what I associated Texas Rangers organization with when I came into that clubhouse. I can now be free. I don't have to worry about making mistakes. I don't care about making mistakes. And Elvis was a big pusher of that too. Elvis was one of those guys who, LB and Adrian, just play, man, just be free. So that was exciting for me, because I never had that feeling before. But another story, just with the Hamels coming over. I can remember that night, Mike Maddox and Banny said, hey, you got Hamels tomorrow. He was making his first start against San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I can remember going, oh shoot, I don't know. I don't even know what he throws. I mean, I've seen him on TV, but I don't know, what he uses, how he uses this. And I'll never forget this. The next day, I believe it was a Saturday, I showed up to the ball. Usually, for the most part, players show up to the ballpark 7:00 game. We're usually there at 1:00, right? I showed up to the ballpark that day at about 9:30, right? Because I was like, I'm not going to be ill prepared catching Cole Hamels. I'm not going to embarrass myself first and foremost, but I'm going to make sure that I do everything possibly prepared for Cole and the San Francisco Giants. So I got there at 9:30, and I swear to you, there at that time they were running tours through our clubhouse, right? So you got tours. Here I am. I got my pen and paper, and I'm going through scout reports, and I'm watching video on all of Cole's starts that year, and I'm just grinding away. And there's just people just filing by me, for like an hour straight as I'm just grinding away on this. And finally, Mike Maddox, he wound up getting there. I think he always got there early, but he wound up getting there probably an hour or so after I did. And we spent another hour or 2 hours just grinding away, trying to make sure that we were on the same page. And that game, he actually threw, I think he went 8 1/3 or something. I think it was something crazy to where he went.
Yes, 7 2/3.
7 2/3. Yeah. So I mean, he pitched really well, and then we wind up losing that game in extra innings, right?
Yep. 9-7. It was a kind of a back and forth weird game with the Giants.
Yeah, I remember actually Hunter Pence hit a homer off a slider off of Dyson that night, and I can remember after that game we talked about, hey, we want Dyson just using sinker and changeup. We're gonna bang that slider. I was like, yeah, that'd been great if you would have told me before Hunter Pence hit a homer in the 11th inning to lose that game. That would have been great. But it was part of it.
I don't think anyone hit a ball in the air off of Sam Dyson the rest of the season. I mean, I've never seen more hitters just pound balls into the dirt right in front of home plate than that year against Sam Dyson.
Yeah, the only other person to get the ball up in the air was Bautista in Game 5.
Yeah,
but other than that was the only other ball that was hit in the air, because he did not throw that after that first night. He did not throw the slider anymore.
Yeah, it was unreal. And you had a great offensive game that day. Do you remember what you did?
I don't think I hit a barrel, but I know I had a couple of hits. I dropped a couple in.
Couple RBI.
That was exciting. Yeah, that was exciting. That was exciting because I remember guys being like, how'd this guy get designated? And I go, guys, I did not put a ball on a barrel. I just had better aim that day. I said, trust me, you're not going to get this every night. This is just I'm dialed in tonight for some reason, but I used my 60-degree to drop a couple balls in over the Giants infielders.
So I remember earlier that year, and again, it was my first year, so I'm just getting to develop relationships with these people. And I was having a conversation with John Daniels, and he was telling me, this was when the team was like several games under 500. This is a good team. Like, I think we're going to turn this around and compete. And I didn't know JD well enough then to know whether he was just saying that or serious. But like now looking back, I know that, JD's really honest and realistic. At least he always has been with me. And I don't think he says that if he didn't truly believe that. And he had legitimate reasons. It wasn't just like, oh, we're going to turn it around. He's like, we're losing all these one-run games. And I believe that, we're going to get the bullpen better because Neftali Feliz was the closer at the time. He was struggling, and we're having some bad luck with the bullpen and some early injuries. And so I think the front office believed it early on. I think players, when you're a part of it all year, I get the sense, and then it's a great thing. Some players maybe not as much, but I think a lot of those guys, those core veterans, are like, no, we're going to do this. Like, we're good. Like, I can't imagine Adrian Beltre thought at any point we suck. It's just not the way that guy's wired. When did you, after coming over, think, wait a second, like this playoff thing is like that, this could happen. Like, we're a really good team, and we're going to maybe catch the Astros.
Yeah. So like I said, the group of guys that we had in that clubhouse, they never quit ever. That was actually our hashtag, wasn't it? Never ever quit.
Never ever quit. Yeah.
And that group of guys never quit. Never quit on the season. Never quit on each other. And when you talk about good teams have each other's back no matter what. They don't point fingers. They don't make excuses. And that group of guys didn't make excuses at all. And it started with Beltre. I can remember when I got there, Adrian had a thumb issue going on, so, the first game that I caught, I can remember them saying, hey, when we strike somebody out, you have to lob the ball over to Adrian because he's dealing with a broken thumb or a ligament, something. So I had to, and I can remember my dad yelling at me. He goes, Bobby, you got to throw the ball around the diamond after you strike somebody out. You can't lob it down to third base. That's what my dad was. You have to do everything hard and to perfection. But I'm like, Dad, I can't throw it. Adrian's got a bad thumb, so I'm throwing balls down, and I mean, they might be hitting the moon, and Adrian's like catching them like this. I don't know if people remember that, but he couldn't catch the ball, yet he posted every single day.
Can I tell you a quick story about that?
Yeah.
So May 31st, the Rangers play the Red Sox. It's a Sunday afternoon. It was the wackiest day. I think it's still to this day the longest we've ever had a post-game show go on, because we had every single person call in, it seemed like. And on Sundays, I can take the post-game show as long as I want. So if we've got a line of callers and you want to hold, I'll get to you. So we had so much happen on that May 31st day. Josh Hamilton, who had just made his return to the Rangers, it's a walk-off double. We come back and beat Boston. Prince Fielder chugs all the way around from first and scores. So you've got we didn't know at the time that Josh had hurt his knee on that very play and was going to be out pretty much, the next several months. So you got the hysteria of a comeback win and Josh Hamilton being a part of it. You've got Adrian Beltre hurting his thumb in that game. And so that conversation, as well as the thought that Joey Gallo was going to be making his major league debut. We had an off day that next day on the Monday, and then the White Sox on the second. So you had all these different things. Meanwhile, I just want the show to end because USC is playing in the College World Series, or like in the postseason for the first time in I don't know how long, and they're playing Virginia. And if they win, they advance to the Super Regional, and I'm watching it on the screen while taking calls. Anyway, Adrian was supposed to miss 6 weeks. And like 3 weeks later, it's a home game. I forget against whom, but we don't have the lineups at 3, at 4. We don't have the lineups at 5. And sometimes you have an idea like, hey, this guy might be coming off at the time, the DL, and they're just waiting for him to, go through a workout or something. Well, Adrian was supposed to be out for 6 weeks. This is like 3 weeks in. It's like a significant thumb injury. We knew, like, none of the writers had even asked, like, is he going out on a rehab assignment soon? There was just like no reason to think Adrian Beltre was anywhere close to playing. But it's like 5:15, and finally at 5:30, we get the lineup. But John Blake over the press box PA is like, roster move. The Rangers have activated Adrian Beltre off of and like he couldn't even finish the statement. And in our broadcast booth, Eric Nadel, Matt Hicks, and I all look at each other like, what the, huh? Did he say that right? And of course, Adrian comes back and has like 2 doubles in that first game. But you talk about that thumb injury for people who just want to truly get a sense of how tough this guy was. This is an injury that like 6 weeks was like the minimum. And he came back in 3 weeks and was still really good and just made concessions. And, there were certain things like, hey, don't throw a strike to him to make sure that he didn't put himself in any more harm's way. But this guy was unbelievable when it came to, playing through pain and playing well through pain.
Yeah. And part of the reason why I have so much respect for Adrian Beltre is, like I said, this dude posted no matter what. And in game 2 of the ALDS against Toronto, Adrian hurt his back, and I when I tell this story, people can't believe it, but I saw it with my very own eyes. I saw Adrian hurt his back. And do you remember how he hurt his back in that game? Do you remember what happened?
Yeah. So we're in Toronto, and was it charging in on a ball from third?
I can't remember exactly how he did it. I want to say it was something like that.
I think he did a throw. I think it was a classic Adrian Beltre charging from third, throwing off balance, and I think he had hurt his back then, and then came back and hit the next inning.
Yes. So when that happened, this man could not barely walk, right? It was unbelievable. I saw him go down into our clubhouse with people helping him in the clubhouse. I saw this man get on a training table, and our trainers and doctors went to work on him to try to get him ready for his next at bat. And you know, shout out to Lucky and Kevin Harmon was there at that time, and I think Dr. Meister was there. But they worked on Adrian for, I don't know, a few innings before his next at bat. And when I tell you this, Adrian couldn't barely get off the table, you know, and it's kind of one of those stories that people don't see, just how tough he was as a player, as a person, his mindset. I saw people carrying Adrian down through, because in Toronto, so you got the dugout, then you got steps going down, then it flattens out, then you have steps going up to the clubhouse. You know, I saw this man get off this table, try to start walking, could barely walk, carry him down to the dugout, gets on the on-deck circle, doesn't take any practice swings because he can't. If he takes a swing, he's going to fall over.
He's got one bullet. He's got one swing.
He has one swing, and he took the one swing in that game and got a hit, RBI hit. And then obviously had to come out after that. But I mean, this guy, it was a battle to get him out, you know, and what people don't remember is Adrian didn't play game 3 or game 4 in that series because he was in so much pain, you know, but he trust me, he did not, he wanted to play in those games, but you could not let him at that point.
I was wrong. It was on a slide. So he reached base in the first inning. He walked, and then running the bases on a slide. And then, you know, in the top of the third, he comes up, it's a scoreless game. And like you said, he's got one swing and gets an RBI base hit and starts the scoring. And, you know, we end up taking the first 2 in Toronto. And I think Hanser Alberto ended up having a pretty big hit, I want to say, in extra innings in one of the games.
Game-winning hit.
Yeah. And I remember that flight back. I was sitting next to Kelly Gavin, team photographer, and we were just like, I mean, we just took 2 from Toronto. You know, this is the year that Toronto got David Price. So, like, Toronto was just a madhouse. It's still to this day the loudest I've ever heard a baseball game. And those games were fun just as a visiting observer because of the atmosphere. It was unbelievable. And I remember we got screwed. We ended up game 3. We played like a noon game or something. And it was like rainy, and I think Marco Estrada pitched or whatever. Anyway, it didn't go well from there. I want to ask you though, do you remember you had one home run with the Rangers that year? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I was in a 12-1 game against the Astros, right?
So the
actually went oppo.
Was the score 12-1 when you hit it? Is that what you're?
No, that was the final score.
14-3.
But I remember hitting 14-3. It was.
Yeah, and the reason I bring this up, to me,
well, felt like 15-1.
Well, so what do you remember about that game? Because I remember that game very clearly, because I think that was maybe the most significant game in the Rangers-Astros rivalry that year.
Martin Perez start that game?
Martin Perez started. Do you remember who started for Houston?
It was Keuchel, right? Because we put up a bunch in the first inning, didn't we?
So that was a 4-game series. We started the series, I think, and it was 4 games at home. And I think we started the series a half game or a game and a half back. And we won the first game, and then we won the second game. So we're a half game up. But then Dallas Keuchel's pitching, and Dallas Keuchel had kicked our ass. Like, we had a tough time all year with Dallas Keuchel, and put up a monster first inning, 6 in the first inning. And it just felt like, I remember leaving the ballpark feeling like these guys are done. Like, and we ended up winning the next day. So swept a 4-game series against them to take control of the division. But that was the game for them. Like, all right, just lost lead in the division, but Dallas Keuchel's pitching. The Astros are going to get the lead back, and then it's a matter of who can win the 4th game. But the first inning, the game was over. And I just remember that being a really significant game. But what was that rivalry like? Like, what was it like to be a part of that over the last couple of months?
Well, I remember that inning very well because I made the last out in that inning. Keuchel struck me out on a back foot cutter. So I remember that inning very well. Thanks for bringing that up. Um, but no, I remember, yeah, everybody else got hits except for me that inning.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, but no, that you're right. At that point in time, it was and just little side note on that. I can remember the first inning of that game. I believe it was Correa led off that game, and I can remember Martin Perez throwing a changeup that it took off, and it I believe, I want to say Gabe Morales was the umpire behind the plate that day. It was the first inning, and I can tell you, there's not a whole lot of times in my career I was nervous and antsy. That game I really was, and for whatever reason, uh, uh, Gabe Morales strikeout looking with Carlos Correa, and the ball hit the dirt. Or no, the ball was close to hitting the dirt, and I'll never forget. Like, I didn't think it was a strike, and it kind of caught me off guard. Strike three, and I threw the ball into left field, trying to throw it around the diamond, And so I turn around to Gabe Morales. I said, "Hey, Gabe, can I get another ball?" He goes, "Bobby, don't show me up like that." And I'm like, "No, I just threw the ball into left field. I need another ball," because usually if the ball's scuffed or whatever, you say, "Hey, can I have a new ball?" I'm like, "Gabe, no, I'm sorry. I'm nervous right now. I just threw the ball in the left field. I need a new ball." The ball didn't hit the ground, So that's one of those games that, has always stuck in my head, and one of those little situations. But going back to the rivalry, like, I really want to say at one point, I always say that we were like 11 games out when I got there, but you proved that it was 8 games.
Well, we can go with 11. Hollywood dramatic effect. We can go.
Yeah,
it sounds better.
Yeah, the fish got bigger, as you get older. So I can remember coming into that, and that series was a good series. You talk about a stadium rocking. In that series, that stadium was absolutely rocking. And I just remember, like, we started playing better, and then it was like, okay, now we got them, and yeah, that series was definitely a turning point. And even before that, we took off to even put ourselves in position for that series. But I remember there was no way that they were going to beat us that series. Not at home, not with our fans rocking, not with the stadium rocking, the confidence that we had. And we had everybody, what were the dates on that one?
Yeah, so that particular game was September 16th. I think the series was the 14th through the 17th.
Yeah. So, and at that point, a lot of the, sort of, you obviously have your Chu, Fielder, Beltre, Mitch Moreland, Rugi, Hamilton, Delino, but kind of the unsung heroes of that roster was the acquisitions of Mike Napoli coming back. Will Venable came in, Drew Stubbs. Obviously Jimenez coming in the same time I did. But there was some veterans that we brought into that clubhouse that were not just great players, but brought the club even closer together.
Do you remember Drew Stubbs made a huge play against Detroit later on that month as a defensive replacement? Detroit was coming back, and Kinsler hit a ball to right center, and it was slicing away. And Stubbs, who was there for his speed and his defense, made this remarkable catch in the gap, and it ended the game. And otherwise, if he doesn't catch it, it's a tie game, and who knows what happens. But that's like when I think about Drew Stubbs, I think about that one play. And it's like you mentioned, yeah, you've got the guys who carry the weight, but you have these other guys who maybe it was just one game or 2 games, but like that in a playoff race, that makes a big difference. Really playing a big part in 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, it brought the clubhouse closer together, more importantly.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much a tight group anyway. But, when you got Knapp coming back, it was like, okay, we got the vibes, we got the party at Napoli's, and we got, the vibes back to where, it felt like it brought some of that American League Championship vibes and feel back, so it was the acquisition of those guys specifically was a big part of the success there towards the end. But there was I feel like just what you said, like that group of guys, myself, kind of the complementary pieces at that point. It seemed like every day, somebody else was doing something. It was, you obviously had I remember Wash used to say you have the bus drivers, and then you have the people that get on the bus. You had the Beltrays and fielders and choo-choos who were driving that bus, but everybody from top to bottom contributed to that run.
Okay, I want to. How about this? Let's call an audible. When we do this next week, we pick up 2015 talk, because there's still a lot I want to ask you about, and I know there's a lot more that went into this. Just individual players, moments. We got to talk about that Blue Jay series, the Angels series at the end of the regular season. So let's do that. But I do want to, we got back by popular demand the rapid fire questions. So I got some rapid fire questions for you to end this, and we'll pick up 2015 talk next week. Does that work?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. First one. Of all the pitchers you have caught, whose single pitch was the best pitch ever? Not like a specific pitch in a particular count, but like so-and-so's changeup or this person's fastball. Like, what was the best pitch you ever caught?
Ooh. I mean, that's a good question. The nastiest pitch I saw, Kevin Jepson. He had a breaking ball that he actually broke Jeff Mathis's wrist with it. And when you talk about a pitch that has it was hard. It was upper 80s. It was hard, and it went straight down. And the way this ball spun, there's not very many guys that you were like intimidated to block balls, but this one, when it hits you, if you had to block it, it would like sizzle in your chest protector, and it almost felt like it went through you, like, so Kevin Jepson's, his curveball was some kind of special. I caught a guy in the minor leagues, Nick Green, and he threw a screwball that was one of the most amazing pitches I've ever seen, honestly, because this thing went, it looked like a left-handed slider. But those two pitches in my mind probably stick out the most.
Okay. Who had when you would go visit the mound, who gave you more laughs on a mound visit of any pitcher? Like, they just routinely, it was, you had to talk business, but it was always a funny conversation, or they always had a good line, whether they were pitching well or not. Is there a particular guy who lightened the mood better than anyone else?
Lackey was always fun to go out there. I'd go out to Lackey. Hey, John, what do you want to do here? He goes, Bob, you know what pays the bills. We're going curveball right here. You know what I mean? So okay, John, you got it. I'd sprint back to home plate. I tell the story to my guys. There's been a couple of times where I've gone out to the mound, and I'll just, I'm not going to mention names of who it is, but obviously I'm more of a veteran. They're a younger pitcher. I'd go out to the mound and I would just stare at him, not say a word, and there was a couple of times where I'd look at the guy and I'd stare at him, and I'll never forget this. One of the guys just goes like this to me. He goes, didn't say a word. He just shook his head like he knew exactly what I was thinking. So we did not say one word during this mound visit. And he gave me and I said, and I just ran back. I didn't even have to give a sign because he knew exactly what I was calling. He knew exactly what I was telling him. So I just ran back there, threw the next pitch, struck the guy out, went in the dugout after. And again, I just gave him that look, So that's probably one of my more memorable mound visits.
Favorite in-game snack?
Oh man, right now we got those honey stingers. They're like little wafers. Those things are delicious.
What
But
about when you're
honestly,
catching?
when I'm catching, I usually didn't have any snacks when I was catching. You know, I mean, probably hard for a lot of people to believe, but I didn't even really eat before games because I wanted that empty kind of stomach feeling. I don't know why. Um, Probably because nerves. But I tried not to. When I was catching, I usually didn't eat. Um, I mean, I'd have lunch, but I wouldn't eat, you know, prior to game or even in game.
I have to eat before I do this. I don't understand how you could do that. That's crazy.
Yeah, weird one.
Favorite home plate ump when you were sorry, obviously umps do everything. Favorite ump to be behind home plate when you're catching.
I have, you know, I was fortunate enough to be in the minor leagues with a lot of guys. My favorite all-time umpire was probably Jim Joyce. You know, he's obviously since retired, but one of my favorites just because we had a great relationship. Tim Timmons is another one that I really like. Adrian Johnson. You know, to be honest with you, somebody asked me this question the other day in the dugout. They're like, why do all these umpires say hello to you? You know, and I'm like, well, because I tried to treat them with respect. I rarely argued with them. I mean, there's times where you have to say, hey, I respectfully disagree with that call there. I believe that it was a strike, but I tried to be as respectful to them as I possibly could. And that's, you know, we talk about stuff that I teach our guys now is, you know, what is it? You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So I try to tell them, let's be conversational and not confrontational when we're talking umpires, because, you know, if you show them the respect, they'll give it back to you. You know, Joe West, I know a lot of people, you know, I like Joe West. Joe West and I always got along. He was always very, you know, I obviously showed him a ton of respect for what he's done in the game, but you know, you know, he was always really, really good to me. Even moving back, like the Tim McClellan's, you know, if people know who that is, he's the one who obviously threw George Brett out for the pine tar. I was able to have him, probably the slowest strike call in all of baseball. It took probably at least a good 5 seconds for him to make the call, you know, and there'd be times where you're sitting at home plate, like, you know, you don't want to look over your shoulder and say, hey, Tim, is that a ball or a strike? But, you know, you'd have to hold it, wait there, and then he'd make his strike call and be like, okay. And then the crowd erupts, so you can run off the field. But, you know, there's a lot of them now that, you know, and like I've said this before, these umpires, regardless of what people say about them, they are very, very good at what they do, you know, and it's not perfect. You know, I understand that. And I think a lot of guys in the game understand that, but, you know, talk about the umpires, they're a lot better than we give them credit for.
Yeah. Our last one. Who gave the best pregame speeches, or if you had a big game, or maybe it's just a particular memorable speech, something that fired you up, whether it was a manager, a coach, a player, whether they did it keenly or it was just, like I said, one before one particular game that, like Al Pacino, any given Sunday pregame speech moment.
Oh man. Usually when we have meetings, they're not good in the big leagues. You know, there's not very many meetings that are motivational. Man, I'm trying to think. I would say it was probably more player driven, honestly. You know, there's always kind of that one guy that comes into the dugout that brings the energy, and you feed off it. Elvis did that a lot for me, honestly. You know, as far as man, like I said, Banny's never ever quit. You know, that was a mentality that we truly embraced. We had it. You know, we had Knapp had the shorts made, the American flag with the hashtag never ever quit. We had T-shirts made. I think when we clinched the division, we had, you know, that was kind of our thing. So that's been one of those things that I've kind of taken with me. And honestly, that's been the most motivational thing that, you know, I've used and had over, you know, at least the last 5-6 years of my career. That was kind of one of those things I took with me.
So I've never fired you up before a game or anything. None of our pregame conversations ever just made you want to run through a brick wall.
No, I will tell you. What was the reporter that was there?
TR?
Gosh, not TR. TR never fired me up for anything. I love TR to death, but he never fired me up. God, I'm forgetting. I'm drawing. He just passed away.
Jerry Fraley.
Jerry, yes. So Jerry, every day I used to come to the ballpark, and he was a Pinellas County guy where I'm from, but every time I came to the ballpark, he would come up to me every single day and he would say, Bobby, he'd say, you can hit, man. And that was inspirational to me, that he didn't have to say that. You know, he took time every day out of his own, you know, schedule to make sure that he came to my locker when I was in the lineup that day, and he'd say, Bobby, you can hit, man. And that, you want to talk about like some kind of motivational, that was motivational for me, because, you know, he said that, he's writing it. But for him to say that to me, it actually did boost me and give me a little bit of confidence, you know, while I was there. And for those couple of years I was there, I remember every time I was in the lineup, I was going to get that, hey man, you can hit. And you start believing that when people tell you that. So, you know, so I take that back. There was motivation from the media.
Wow, that's a surprise. Now I feel like I never did my part. I never went up to you and gave you that daily encouragement. I would just go up to you and shoot the breeze.
Well, that gets my mind. That helps, because that gets my mind off all the other stuff. You need that release. You know, shoot the breeze. Talk Pac-12 football. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, there you go. This is episode 3 of Catching Up with Bobby Wilson. We will pick up episode 4 next week with a continuation of the 2015 season. Bobby is currently in Baltimore, getting ready for the second game of the 4-game series between the Rangers and the Orioles. Bobby, enjoy the rest of the road trip. We'll talk to you when you get back home.
All right. Thank you. That was fun, man. I had a good time.